ሰብስክራይብ በማድረግ ቤተሰብ ይሁኑ። አርቲስት ቲቪ
Welcome to Africa on Arts TV. Each week, Africa, both in English and in French, will highlight news, information, and views to reveal the true color of the continent. Regarding coronavirus, half of the continent, that is 13 countries, has confirmed their first cases. Africa have a special segment regarding coronavirus. More African nations confirmed their first case of the coronavirus and shut down borders amid fears of disease's impact on a fragile health system. Until this report was organized, the virus have multiplied in Africa more slowly than Asia or Europe, but 36 nations of the continent have now reported a total of more than 700 cases. Worldwide, it has infected more than 227,000 people and killed more than 9,000. Rwanda has suspected all passengers' flight in and out of the country after detecting 3 new cases of coronavirus, bringing the number to 11. South Africa's President Ramaphosa took drastic measures to tackle the coronavirus after the projection shows that between 87,900 and 351,000 people could die if the government did not take measures. Chad is also closing its land border with Sudan and Central African Republic after both reported cases of coronavirus. However, Chad borders with the Cameroon and Nigeria would remain open despite the fact they have also reported cases of the virus. Gathering more than 15,000 people are also being banned in Chad. The government of Sudan is preparing isolation center near to the border with Egypt where more than 100 cases have been reported. The government has also announced a state of emergency and closed borders and food price and rising of shortage wars on. Kenya's authority have seized a shop allegedly seeking fake coronavirus testing kit. The Standard newspaper reported that the police detained 10 people and locked the facility in the capital Nairobi in Monday, Rydal. The suspects are advertising their testing kits online. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, the government announced schools and sport activities will be suspended for a couple of weeks. The head of the World Health Organization has said Africa must wake up of the coronavirus threat and prepare for the worst. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the continent should learn from how this virus is spreading in elsewhere. Health experts warns the strained public health system in Africa could become quickly overwhelmed if the virus took place once and more. Tedros Adhanom also recommended the actual mass gathering should be avoided and we all should keep our hands clean by starting a wash hand challenge.
There are several practical measures you can take to protect yourself from the new coronavirus. One of the most important is regular, safe and effective hand hygiene, using soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. Here are the steps recommended by WHO to follow. You too can have safe and clean hands anywhere. Now I'm calling on the world to take the WHO Safe Hands Challenge to be ready for coronavirus.
Dr. Johnny Kangoso is the director of the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention, African CDC. Prior to his current position, he served as an acting deputy principal director of the Central for Global Health, United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and chief of the International Laboratory Branch, Division of the Global HIV and TB. Africa sat down with Dr. John in his office at the African Union headquarters to discuss the effort and readiness towards preventing the and awareness creation regarding the coronavirus. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your time. I know you are very busy with all the situations happening, but thank you for making a time with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
So before we start talking about the viruses and how it's happening in Africa, let's talk about CDC and what it's have been doing currently.
So the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was, as you probably are aware, launched in December 2017 here in Ethiopia at the African Union Commission. It was launched in an accelerated manner because of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa that occurred in 2014. And the head of states, in their wisdom and vision, thought that the continent was ripe to have a specialized technical institution. But before that, it's important to note that the head of states in 2013, at an extraordinary meeting in Abuja, in Nigeria, started thinking about it, that the population of the continent was expanding tremendously, that the disease patterns of the continent was changing a lot, so they needed to look at it carefully and say, how do we support the continent with an institution that is owned and driven by the African Union Commission? So that's a little bit the genesis of Africa's CDC.
Yeah, the CDC is working very tremendously these days with all the outbreaks starting from Ebola, now coronavirus. And don't you think the organization needs a separate place, working with huge manpower to deliver what the mission is about?
Your question is absolutely right. You need two things to be effective as a Centers for Disease Control. You need people and you need money. But we should also put that in the context of a growing institution. As I said, we are only 3 years old, and we are recruiting people as quickly as possible. And we are creating a demand for member states, which means they are seeing the good work that Africa CDC is doing, the value added in the space of public health, working closely with the World Health Organization. I think over the next coming years, you begin to see a much expanded Africa CDC, especially in the context of these outbreaks that we are seeing, the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, then the coronavirus outbreak all over the world and in Africa there.
You mentioned the Ebola outbreak, so related to that, how is the preparation regarding the laboratories and medications, if there's any, to the coronavirus outbreak these days?
So there's, as we know for coronavirus, there's no vaccine, but there are about 30 candidate vaccines that are being produced in the world now as we speak. So I'm very optimistic that in the next 12 months or so we'll have a vaccine. There's no treatment. It means there are no drugs out there that can cure or treat for coronavirus, but there are clinical trials going on using different existing antiretroviral drugs. We'll see what that tells us. So our best hope now is still around prevention of the brain. What kind of measures can we take to reduce transmission, to care for people that have been infected, and then to minimize harm in the society. There's disruption in the way we do business.
So how is the CDC is prepared to deal with the situation, starting from the awarenesses, telling the transmission and the prevention? So how is the CDC prepared regarding that?
So very early on, if you know the history of this outbreak, you know that it started during the holiday period in December and January. And when we resumed in January, we knew already that the continent was going to be under a serious threat. So we started working closely with World Health Organization to put in place diagnostic capacity on the continent. We very quickly worked closely with the WHO to scale up diagnostics from 2 countries to 43 countries. We started organizing ourselves in a way that we could provide training in enhanced surveillance and airport screening in the areas of infection prevention and control, and in risk communication there, and care and management of patients. So we've also developed this and pushed this agenda to a higher level. On the 22nd of February, the chairperson of the African Union chaired a meeting, an emergency meeting of all ministers of health from Africa, where I was impressed that within 1.5 weeks, you could gather about 36 ministers of health and other senior representatives for a total of over 42 countries came on a Saturday. And we discussed a common strategy on how to prepare the continent and fight for this. At that time, it's important to note that only Egypt had reported a case, but today 26 countries have reported a case, which means the Commission was, the African Union and Africa CDC was foresighted. We knew that even though only Egypt had reported a case, that cases will come, and they will come soon, because we understand how viruses move. So I think that's how the Africa CDC, working closely with WHO, have prepared the continent to respond.
We're working closely with WHO and the government of every country in Africa. What kind of measures should be, as an organization, you suggest should be taken now, especially in African countries? If I'm not mistaken, it's not that much widely spread. So if we have to put a measure and to stop it now, what kind of suggestion as an organization you put?
Very good question. I think, as you rightly indicated, we are at a phase what I call the dawn of the COVID-19 outbreak in Africa. China is, by comparison, China is at the sunset of that. So it's early morning for us. We have to do a couple of things and do it quick. The key thing is we have to act quick, which means we have to make sure that we scale up the testing. Test anybody that is that needs to be tested. Isolate these people so that we can reduce transmission. We call it flattening the curve. So instead of having the curve that there's an outburst like that, you go slowly like that. What is the implication of that? If we do not do what I just recommend, you get a large number of people infected. It means a subset of that will require hospital services, and hospital care systems will not be able to provide that services there. But if you flatten the curve, it means you not stop people from being infected, but they'll be in smaller amounts, and your hospital systems can cope with that. That's what we mean by flattening the curve. So that's the strategy we are advising countries to follow. That's what we, Africa CDC, are coordinating with the task force. The task force that the ministers of health endorse. We call it the African Task Force for Coronavirus.
Can we put the effect of this virus, if we have to categorize it according to age and sex? Because one way or another, without awareness, people are panicking these days. So who should get the first prevention? It's like having a sanitizer and other equipment is first. And can we put it? Can we classify it accordingly with sex and age?
I think that's a very important question. I mean, what you are saying is that how can we use good science and evidence to support our preparedness and response strategy? So let me start with what we know, then I'll go to what we don't know. What we know is that everybody is vulnerable to this, but what we know is that the people who are older are much vulnerable to this. And this category of people will have more fatality, which means more deaths will occur in people who are old. Second thing we know is that the vast majority of people, about 80% of the people that are infected, will develop very mild symptoms. 15% of those will develop some severe symptoms, but they will get over it. Just 5% of that will be critical, and of that, a small group will require respiratory support. That is important for this. We also know that children, when they are infected, but they deal with the virus better than others. So that is also very important for our strategy there. So that's what we know so far. What we don't know yet is whether there's a difference in response or how males and females cope with the virus. For now, again, we have to look at what is going on in China and Europe. Now, for Africa, I just want to be very clear. There's still a lot of unknowns. We should always be mindful that every epidemic is local, which means there are local conditions that will influence that. So what do I mean by this? In Africa, you have other co-infections like HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, and malnutrition. What will happen if a large population segment is infected and they also have some of these co-infections? What will happen? Maybe our young people who are healthy will not be affected because we don't have a lot of old people. But it's also possible that because our population is exposed to other infections, that the situation may be unfavorable. The coming 2 weeks or 3 weeks will teach us a lot on the continent.
Any message you want to pass, how we have to protect ourselves and our communities?
I think there are two things we need to do. First is take individual responsibility and accountability, which means you wash your hands. We wash our hands regularly with soap. If there's no water immediately available, use hand sanitizers. When you cough on your sleeves or on tissue and discard them properly. That we do not touch our face. If you're feeling sick, you stay home, isolate yourself. It's what I call personal responsibility and accountability. The society also has to take responsibility, which means we have to maintain social distancing. Be a few meters away from each other. Don't shake hands. Let's suspend handshaking for now. We'll come back to that later. No shoulder greeting. In Ethiopia, we have to adjust all our behavior. I mean, we have to change our behaviors there. Very importantly is the community cannot panic, and we should rely on the right information and not spread false information, both on social media and on other media outlets. It will make it difficult for us to come out of this very troubling situation. If we do these things that I just highlighted, then the chances that the pressure that we have now will be short-lived, will be improved. But if we do not do that, we'll be in for a very, very long haul.
Thank you so much for your time, Doctor.
Thank you.
On another topic out of the coronavirus, Catherine Hameen, that is an Australian who established Addis Ababa Fistula Hospital, have passed away at the age of 96. She helped develop constructive surgery techniques to treat tens of thousands of women in Ethiopia with a condition called fistula. Dr. Catherine Hameen, an Australian gynecologist who devoted her life to treating Ethiopian women with a devastating childbearing injury and helped empowering techniques to treat it, died on Wednesday at her home in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's capital, at the age of 96. Her death was announced by the Catherine Hameen Fistula Foundation in Sydney, Australia, an independent charity she co-founded. Dr. Catherine, responding to an advertisement, arrived in Ethiopia with her husband, who is also a physician, in 1959 to work as a gynecologist at the hospital in Addis Ababa. But what started as planned 3 years turned into a 6-decade-long mission in which the two doctors worked closely with a woman who had a childbearing injury known as fistula. When Dr. Catherine and her husband arrived in Ethiopia, there was no treatment available for such patients anywhere in the country. In 2018, the World Health Organization estimated that more than 2 million young women lived with untreated fistula in Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. After performing a surgery to repair injury for many years in Ethiopia Hospital, Dr. Catherine and her husband built Addis Ababa Fistula Hospital in 1974 aimed to communist revolution there. There is also establishment a network of clinics and hospitals throughout the country that have provided reconstructive surgery to more than 16,000 Ethiopian women. Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization and the former Health Minister of Ethiopia, said on his Twitter page about her days, "You are the best humanitarian and very special. We all must continue carrying your mission forward." Catherine was born on January 24, 1924 in Sydney. One of the 6 children, she graduated from the University of Sydney School of Medicine in 1946. She met Rachel Hameen while working as a resident in the Crown Street Women's Hospital in Sydney. Twice nominated for the Nobel Prize, Dr. Catherine Hameen won the Right Livelihood Award in 2009, an international honor given annually to those providing solution to the most urgent problem facing humanity. In 2012, the government of Ethiopia awarded her honorary citizenship. On Thursday, the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said Ethiopia lost a true gem who dedicated more than 60 years of restoring the dignity of thousands of women.